It isn't. The reading is Matthew 14, chapter 14, verses 22 to 33. When the day was over, Jesus told the disciples to take the boat to the other side of the lake. I'm going to stay here and pray, he told Peter. The disciples set out, rowing the little boat across the rippling water. It was not until they were some distance out that the weather changed. There came a stiff breeze and white wave tops. It was going to be another Gallican storm. Peter stood in the storm, in the stern, steering the boat as skillfully as he could. He was keeping a sharp lookout for the safest route when he saw, well, something. At first, he thought it was a trick of the shadows, or maybe a plume of spray where a fish had leaped and dived. Then he saw more clearly. It was a human. It's a ghost, he shrieked. Look, tell me it's not true. What can this mean for us all? The others dropped their oars to look, then tumbled back down, shrieking with fear. We're going to die! We're going to die! It's me, Jesus said. What's the panic for? Is it? Shouted Peter. He didn't sound convinced. If it's you, Jesus, tell me to walk to you. Come on then, Peter, said Jesus. When he recalled the incident, Peter himself was amazed at what happened next. He simply stepped out onto the water. For the first few steps, all was well. Then a gust of wind made him lose his balance. He panicked and started to sink. Help! He screamed. Jesus reached out and grabbed him by the hand. What happened to your faith, Peter? He asked. Why did you doubt? Come on, let's get back in the boat. As they both climbed aboard, the wind died down. The other disciples looked at one another. They looked at Jesus. You can't deny it, can you? They said. You really are the Son of God. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Thank you.
Hi, Rolf. I'm home. What a night. Did you hear that storm?
Yes, I heard it.
What's the matter with you?
Nothing.
Come on, I know you, Elizabeth. Spit it out.
Well, Aunt Martha, next door, she came round to tell me you'd left that lovely Jesus on the other side of the lake last night.
Ah,
Well, did you?
aye.
So he had to walk round the lake in the dark, on his own, in that storm? Shame on you.
Yep.
So, you had to leave him there all by himself to walk all the way around the lake?
No, he didn't walk round the lake.
So you went back for it?
No, not exactly.
Oh, so he got a lift with someone else?
No.
Well, did you? So you did walk here then?
Well, yeah.
So he had to walk round the lake then?
No, he definitely did not walk around the lake.
Oh, so what did he do? Walk across it?
Yep.
I don't believe it.
Well, that's exactly what happened. We didn't believe it either. We did leave him because he asked us to. He said he wanted to be alone. And there we were, middle of the night, rowing really hard against wind. And suddenly we see this ghostly figure coming towards us on the water. We were really scared. Our knees were knocking so much you could hardly hear the wind. And then the figure shouts out, he says, "Here, lads, don't be afraid, it's me, Jesus." It weren't a ghost, it was Jesus, walking on water.
Well, I suppose that's all right. You're so a bit wet, huh? Oh, no, don't tell me. You saw Jesus walking towards you, he said follow me, and you did. You went out of the water, onto the boat, out of the boat, onto the water. Oh, you crazy man.
Yep. You know, actually, I did walk on the water. Jesus is coming towards me, and I said, "Here, Jesus, if that's you, call me to come and join you." And he says, "Go, Peter, over you come." So I fixed my eyes directly on Jesus and I got out of the boat. And I was doing it. I was walking on water, me, Peter. And then I took my eyes off Jesus and the waves started to look really big and I started to sink. Jesus had to pull me out.
Oh, Peter. Wait till I tell that Martha next door.
Oh, no, please, no.
Oh, all right, love. I'm sorry I laughed. I mean, you see the funny side of it, you do look daft. Look, I can see it took a lot of courage to step out of that boat and try and walk on the water. And there's loads of people that think they can, and I don't think there's many that would have tried it. You're 1 in a million, love. Would you like a cup of tea to warm you up?
Aye, go on then.
Well, thank you to JJ Nelson. It's always a bit of a risk when you have a drama like that when you have to follow it. Anyway, here goes. Peter is perhaps the most enthusiastic disciple. When Jesus asks for something to happen, it's Peter who has his hand up first to volunteer. He may not get it right all of the time, a lot of the time, but his effort is inspiring. Here's what we might describe as being on fire for the Lord. And he wants to be a part of everything that Jesus is doing right away. You know how dogs get all excited when their owner comes home, racing towards them with their tails wagging? Well, that's Peter, when he realises it's Jesus. Now, unlike Mark, from my limited boat experience, predominantly on cruise ships, when the waves start up and the boat starts to rock, you find a nice safe space, say your bed, and you get comfy. And you only go for a wander to get food and then back to your safe space. You definitely don't go out on the promenade deck, even if you're strong enough to force the door open, which at times I'm not able to do, even when it's not windy, Or you go up on the sun deck in the middle of a storm. Why get lashed with wind and rain when you could walk where you want in a nice dry corridor lower down by the lift? However, my goddaughter, she's recently taken part in the Fastnet race. A crazy child. Absolutely. In a storm, I know from her that you batten down the hatches, you put on your life jackets, you hunker down in the belly of the boat and pray that the waves don't get any bigger and the winds don't get any stronger. Oh, and make sure you attach your safety line. It seems the safest way to avoid getting hurt seems to be to stay in the boat, and 92% of the disciples do exactly that in this story. Get out of the boat? Are you mad? I used to always think that Peter was nuts for getting out of the boat and thinking he could walk on water. As you all well know, I'm a person of a nervous disposition, and to be honest, I wouldn't be in such a small boat to start with. If you'd like to know more about that, just ask me over coffee or at nearly tea about Vietnam or Peru, and I'll tell you about Mandy in small boats. For a start, there's the weather conditions. There's a storm, and it's the early hours of the morning when sane people are fast asleep, warm in their beds. And as we know, walking on water is a physical impossibility. It would take all the joy out of my swimming for a start. But of course, Jesus is the master of the impossible. The disciples have seen him heal people, turn water into wine, and later on he will see raise Lazarus from the dead. The disciples were called by Jesus to follow him, and following God's call will take us out of our comfort zones to do the impossible. That's what following Jesus is all about. I remember very well that time at university when I said to God, well, if you're going to call me, I'll say yes. Duh. I ended up on a 2-week-long street mission in London, talking to people on street corners, going door to door around the community, inviting people to events, and plenty of public speaking. What was I thinking? What was God thinking? Well, of course, he knew what I'd end up doing. I, at that point, though, had no idea and thought I'd get a nice little office job and keep running my church's youth group of about 8 young people. Nice and safe and well within my comfort zone. God had other plans. But what I really wanted, though, was to be where God was. You know, I've never felt fully prepared, ready, or particularly confident, but I've always known that God was all of those things. I'm going to do this properly. Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. I learned that as a child. It stood me in good stead. Wow. As well as having some major prayer backing from my prayer warrior mum, the prayer warriors here at Cox, and those of you who know my special WhatsApp group of prayers who are called upon when I'm having a wobble and remind me that of the God who called me. This story, however, also demonstrates the importance of putting our faith in Christ. Peter tried to do the impossible, and when his eyes dropped on his own, he failed. The story reminds us we're only capable of anything through God's power. Like the majority of the people who stayed in the boat, most of us, I think, would stay in the boat too. And in this way, the boat becomes a metaphor of how we try to keep ourselves safe and comfortable and sheltered, particularly when things are rough. The writer and pastor John Ortberg identifies them to us this way, saying, your boat is whatever represents safety and security to you, apart from God himself. Your boat is whatever you're tempted to put your trust in, especially when life gets a bit stormy. Your boat is whatever keeps you so comfortable that you don't want to give it up, even if it's keeping you from joining Jesus on the waves. Your boat is whatever pulls you away from the adventure of discipleship. So what is your boat? I have many boats. My physical impossibility to do this job, for one. As someone who's rather physically challenged in many ways, look, I can't even reach to get the cleaning spray out of the kitchen cupboard. Can you please stop putting that on the top shelf? Please. God wouldn't call me, because I'm not able to do this or that. Well, how wrong I was. But it does mean I have to rely on the physical abilities of others. I have to regularly put aside my desire to get things done and for others to offer to help, and thank you, you all know who you are. But I'm always feeling guilty for asking for the simplest job to be done by another. I'd rather stay in the boat. And we stay in the boat because we fear failing. If we stay within the comfort of what we know and have experience of doing, then we can't fail, or can we? If I'd stayed at my first church, I know I'd have had a good impact on those 8 young people. But following God's call has meant I've now worked at 4 churches with hundreds of young people. Which is the failure? The one who tried and sunk, or the one who refused to get out of the boat? You know, though, it's comfortable in that boat. Now, you know I like to swim. I was asked the other day if I'd ever tried open swimming. My response, no way. I like my creature comforts. At the pool, there's no large waves, no sand between your toes, and no painful rocks to walk over. There's no weather conditions to cope with, and of course the water temperature. There are times also we need to be in the boat. When we're tired or unwell, when life is battering us with a storm, when we need to build up our spiritual reserves or learn new skills. Are we using it as a time to prepare, or does it become a way of life, settle down to stay there forever? Getting out of the boat? Was Peter mad? Or were the disciples mad? Because in this passage, Jesus isn't in the boat. Most of us will stay in the boat, but not Peter. Peter embraces the call to discipleship and hears Jesus' invitation to come. He anticipates that something exciting is going to happen, and like a child standing on the side of the pool wanting to jump in, he yells out to Jesus, "Are you ready?" asking permission to take the leap. Jesus responds with a simple command, "Come," urging Peter to join him. And that simple invitation is all it takes to get Peter walking on water. What would it take for you to get out of the boat? That's one of the questions. I don't know if you've read this book. I haven't read all of it. I'm halfway through, but I did skip bits so I can do this talk. It's one of the questions he asks in his book. He offers that God calls us to get out of the boat in a variety of ways. And there are 4 things that can motivate us. First, he identifies fear. Now, I always thought fear would keep you in the boat. But actually, he identifies it as actually fear making us want to grow and actually making us want to try things. Second, he suggests frustration in our lives. You know that gap between where our life is and where God wants it to be, and where our world is and where we think is God's kingdom. And it's that frustration that makes us move. Third, there's compassion. Those things that target our heartstrings and compel us to respond in love and care. And finally, prayer. Recognising that we might actually see the path, but through God and through prayer, we might. So we must be attentive to the calls placed on us to get out of our boat. We must look outside the boat and see where Jesus is calling us to go. Because there is work for every one of us to do, no matter what our age or physical abilities. Out of the boat means taking a risk. Those pictures are the best I can find, I'm afraid. Trusting in something bigger than we can see. Doing so can be terrifying, as illustrated by Harrison Ford, that's his leg, in the classic Indiana Jones trilogy. Consider this, the final of the 3 tests, as Indy seeks the final grave, holy grave. Thank you. The holy grave, as he tries to save his father's life, the step of faith. And getting out of the boat is a leap of faith. Fortunately, we aren't just stepping off into thin air, nor are we being completely thrown in the deep end without help. Jesus is there, calling to us and encouraging us to step out. And if we get scared, we start to sink. Jesus is there to hold us so that the waters will not overwhelm us. After all, he is the one who has come to us saying, "Don't be afraid." Jesus just doesn't appear when the waters have been calmed. Jesus has the power to walk with us over the stormy waters and gives us abilities to do things beyond anything we could ever imagine. And all this is possible with just a little bit of faith. Little faith that is the size of a mustard seed and can still move mountains. The little faith that gets Peter and us out of the boat. One of the songs of my car CD is called A Pocket Full of Faith. If you have a chance to YouTube it, do try it. Whenever I hear this, I get an image of a pocket which your hand only just fits in, and I see my hand pulling out just the smallest handful. And the lyrics go, take this pocket full of faith. It's all I have today. I'm giving it all. We aren't called to give what we don't have. God knows each one of us better than we know ourselves, and small can be perfect if we trust in God. And may I remind you of last month's all-age service. Jesus said, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. If we're following God's call and yoked to him, we'll have all we need. All will be provided, everything that we need. So if you want to follow Jesus, then occasionally you will have to get out of the boat and walk on water. But you're not alone. You step out with that supernatural support that comes from the creator of the universe. What I do know is that if Jesus tells you to get out of the boat, then he will be with you. This is not some ghost like Simon Peter first saw. Peter knew he could walk, and he was aiming towards Jesus, so of course he could do it. Like Peter, we need to know what we've got and where we're going, and then be willing to try. Not starting from where we once were, but from where we are now. For a few moments, all went well. But then Peter realised what he was doing and started to sink. And we should be surprised if we sink occasionally. Human nature is to sink. Human nature is to take our eyes off Jesus and suddenly realise what we're doing. We may not even know what the distractions are because we've never got out of the boat to find out. Or we may be all too well aware of the storms and issues in our lives that can so easily overwhelm and take our focus from Jesus. But as happened with Peter and Jesus, God can pick you up. He didn't let him drown, but held him secure and saved him. And this isn't a one-time action. He'll do this again and again. Just like Peter, you can walk on water. How will you know until you get out of the boat? So, what can we learn? I've got 7 quick points. Prayer. Jesus started the night praying. Prayer. Storms and timing. Well, storms come up at the most inconvenient times. 3 a.m. is a fairly terrible time to be fighting off the waves. But no matter where they arise, we need to be ready. Look for Jesus. He is there in the midst of the storms, and he may show up in unusual ways. Possibly not as a ghost, though. 4. Don't fear. Have faith. Faith unleashes God's power. Peter didn't experience that supernatural power of God that allowed him to walk on water until he trusted and got out of the boat. When Peter had faith, he walked on water. When he had fear, he sank. 5. Step out in that faith. Peter asked Jesus to call him out of the boat, and in that moment, Peter was all in. His faith was absolute, like that of a child's. Are you childish enough to ask crazy things from God? A little faith is better than no faith. And the Lord Jesus spoke of Peter's little faith. Faith is simply taking the next step. Peter took one step to get out of the boat and onto the water, and he was doing just fine when concentrating on just that step. He had trouble when he was then thinking ahead. 6. Focus. If you've been so fortunate to have Jesus allow you to miraculously walk on water, don't start doubting when you see the wind and waves as Peter did. But know that even in that moment of weakness, Jesus will reach out his hand. And 7. Know who Jesus is. The disciples earlier that day had seen Jesus feed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish. And yet it was only here, in the middle of the night, in the midst of a storm, that walking on water and causing the wind to stop made them exclaim in excitement, "You really are the Son of God." Are you praying for Thea and Joe, for their move to join us, for their stepping out of the boat? Are you praying for us, the church, yourself, to be ready for their arrival? We have some precious time now before fear comes to prepare ourselves for the changes coming our way. So this passage comes at a perfect point. We still have time to prepare our hearts and minds, to challenge our thoughts and traditions, or the thoughts that say, we've always done things this way. We've got time to spend with Jesus, to ask him to listen and to give him time to speak. So something you need to deal with now so you can get out of the boat. Maybe in these next few months you can test the water, have some practice attempts, push your boundaries just a little bit. Looking to Jesus, may we all be ready to get out of the boat. In a short while, we're going to hear the song Oceans, and the lyrics are pretty challenging. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters, wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Saviour. If you're able, please stand for the next song.